benefits and maybe the rumors about carbohydrates. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Rita Amen.
Dr. Moses, thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to talk about the topics of carbohydrates and dive into it a little bit deeper, and hopefully address rumors that we constantly hear about when it comes to carbohydrates. So again, thank you so much for having me today, and I'm very excited to dive into this a little bit deeper. So let me go ahead and share my slide with everybody today, and let's get started on it. So today's topic is titled "The Myths of Carbohydrates and Weight Loss." Now, this topic has received a lot of attention, and I would like to go through the breakdown of what we'll be discussing today. First, I will introduce the topic of carbohydrates. Then we'll dive into the quality of carbohydrates altogether. Then address the individual guidelines of carbohydrate intake, and then talk about how bad are they for our weight, or address the rumors altogether. And what does the research say about carbohydrates in relation to weight management? And then we'll talk about personalized tools regarding the intake or our dietary habits, and then we'll end with a summary and takeaway point. The first question that is quite common and that I constantly hear about it, whether this is in the academic field or in the clinical setting, we always want to know, how do we manage our body weight? And believe me, the common answer that we constantly hear about is avoid carbohydrates, be on a low-carb diet, and that is all around and it's across the board. But before I dive into what we are going to be addressing today, I want to address the functions of carbohydrates in the body and understand this a little bit deeper. So first thing is, what is the functions of carbohydrates? So carbohydrate is a critical fuel for our cells, for our brains, for our nervous system, and for our red blood cells. And they're also a critical source for a quick energy. In the body, typically, they are stored as glycogen in the form of glycogen from the original source, which is glucose. They are also used in our bodies for the building blocks of protein. They also have other functions, such as contributing to flavor, contributing to color, and the texture of our foods, like the natural sugars that we find in our sweeteners. And in addition to that, they provide a source of essential nutrients. For example, they are found in grains, in fruits, in vegetables, in legumes. So they are in quite everything that we eat. Not only that, but they do provide an exceptional source of dietary fiber. And alone, dietary fiber contributes to our intestinal health. Fibers help lower our blood cholesterol. They help absorb our blood sugars. Not only that, but also contribute to the satiety, which can help with weight management. So from what you can see, there's a wide variety of functions of carbohydrates that we benefit from all across the board. But the quality of carbs tend to be different. We have some carbohydrates that are referred to as simple carbohydrates and some that are referred to as complex carbohydrates. Now, you may ask me, where can this be found? So simple carbohydrates are known to be or referred to as monosaccharides or disaccharides. In other words, those are just different ways of saying sugars based on how they are broken down in our bodies. And they can be found in table sugars, in milk sugars, in sprouted seeds, in our fruits. And so we can find them in everything that we eat. Now, the other option of carbohydrate is going to be the complex carbohydrates. The complex carbohydrates are things where we talk about dietary fiber, and they can be found in food options such as potatoes, corn, wheat products, grains, brown rice, vegetables, and fruits. So again, there is more than one way of saying the word sugars or carbohydrates, and the quality is different depending on the source that we actually eat. So most common terms that you'll hear carbohydrates referred to, or in other words, the simple terms, are sugars, starches, and fiber. And if you look in this table, carbs are practically in everything that we eat. They are in our vegetable group. They are in our grains group, like we saw before. They are in our fruits group. They are in our dairy. And they are in some protein sources, with the exception of meat, chicken, fish, eggs. Those food sources don't have carbohydrates, but foods like, for example, legumes, those ones have, they tend to have sugars in them, or starches, in other words. Okay? Sorry about that. Your body utilizes carbohydrates quite differently. Carbohydrates, depending on whether we're eating them or whether we are avoiding carbs altogether. So remember, in the beginning of the presentation, we had stated that carbohydrates tend to be stored in our bodies as glycogen. Now, we're going to take two different scenarios. The first scenario, what happens when a person eats? What happens to these carbohydrates? So first thing is, your body takes these carbohydrates, breaks them down into the simple forms sugar to be absorbed. Then they are stored in our liver and muscles as glycogen. And some others are stored as body fat, or in our body fat stores in our cells. Now, in other words, what happens when we don't eat, when a person is fasting? Your body tends to dip into the savings, it's what I call them. So dip into the stores and goes into the liver and muscle and takes out that glycogen, converts it into a glucose, and we utilize it for energy. So from what you can see, carbohydrates are quite essential for us. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that because carbohydrates are in everything and everything has sugar, should I avoid carbs altogether? The answer is no. Quality matters, but why? So this is the question where we can dive into the anatomy of the grain itself, or the carbohydrate itself. If you look at the carbs altogether, you can see that the outside layer, or the wheat kernel on the outside, it has the bran layer. Then it's composed of a middle layer where that's called the endosperm layer. And then the deepest layer of the grain is the germ layer. Now you may ask me, well, how does this grain differ from another grain? And here's the answer. So let's take two simple examples. Let's take a whole grain and compare it to a refined grain or a white grain. If you notice on the whole grain, the outside layer, as we stated, it's the bran layer. And that's where a lot of the fiber is found, and some of the B vitamins and trace minerals are found on that outside layer of the grain. Then if you look between the two grains, you'll notice that they both share an endosperm, but they do not, but the whole grain has the bran, and it's not found in the refined grain. The endosperm layer, that's where you can find a lot of the starches, or the carbohydrates, in other words, the sugar, along with some protein. Now, in the whole grain, the third layer is the germ layer. And in that germ layer, in the core exactly here, we can see that that's where the nutrient-rich sources are found. And the grain contains antioxidants like vitamin E. It does have B vitamins and other healthy fats, which is not found in the grain itself. So this makes the quality of the grain a lot more beneficial if we consume a whole grain versus a refined grain. Now, let's compare this on a further level. So looking at the whole grain itself in the tan-colored bars right here, you'll notice that the whole grain is actually rich in iron, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folate, B6, fiber, which we'll touch base on this again here, magnesium, and zinc. So you'll notice that the entire nutrients are found within this whole grain, versus an unriched white bread where there's little to no nutrition value. And you see that the nutrients are actually a lot lower compared to the whole grain itself. And this tells us that there is a quite difference from the type of carbohydrates that we choose on daily basis. Now, we highlighted an important point in the previous slide, which was fiber that is found in this complex carbohydrates or the whole grain. There is two distinct types of dietary fiber that are soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. So let's start with the soluble fiber itself. Where can this be found? It's found in items like barley, rye, oats, oat bran, apples, berries, legumes, and many vegetables and seeds. And the way that our bodies benefit from this is from the soluble fibers is by increasing our satiety, which will help with our weight management. It also helps to manage our blood cholesterol. It also slows down our glucose absorption. It's also a great source of promoting a healthy gut, or basically a healthy colonic bacteria. All those benefits are quite important for the health of your liver, the health of your heart, and the health of your colon. So consuming dietary fiber that's particularly soluble can help reduce also the risk of colon cancer and rectal cancer. But mostly, it does help with weight management. Now, the other type of dietary fiber, it's called insoluble fiber. And this one is found in the grains products, also legumes and many other vegetables, and also nuts and seeds. Now, these sources specifically, they actually increase the bulk and enlarge and softens our stool and enhances our intestinal motility. Not only that, but they also increase the bulk and making us feel full for a longer period of time, which again, we can see the other benefits in that it helps with weight management. So all in all, both of them play a quite important role in our satiety and our intestinal motility and preventing the buildup of bad bacteria in our gut. Now, you may ask me, well, how does my body metabolize or digest the fiber intake if I do consume it from the carbohydrates? Well, digestion of carbohydrates begins in the mouth. So that's very, very important. Now, when we consume the food, we actually chew, and that chewing mixed with our saliva is the initial start of breaking down the carbohydrates. Now, the unique part about fiber is that it's not digested or absorbed by our bodies in the early stages of digestion. Fiber is actually digested in our large intestines, and that's where the biggest role that fiber plays is in our gut. And when we have that, when we have the healthy gut, we can see in return that it does contribute to our weight altogether. Now, the next question we may ask or wonder about, since carbs are in everything, and we understood that quality, yes, it does matter. Now, the question is, does quality and quantity of carbohydrate matters? And how do I manage my weight with carbohydrates? Again, the answer is both quality and the quantity of carbohydrates do matter. Now, the My Plate concept, if you've seen this before, wonderful. If not, basically the My Plate concept from the Nutrition Guidelines for Americans dictates or advocates that our plate should have a balance of whole grains, or at least half of our grains should be whole grains, and consuming vegetables, fruits, and lean proteins, as well as plant-based proteins. For example, beans, nuts, and seeds. Those are the classic examples of plant-based protein. And all of that is rich in vitamins, minerals, as well as fiber. And again, we see this term again. So these guidelines suggest that we should be leaning more towards half of our grains should be whole grain. Now, the intake can vary depending on the age group and also where we are at in life. So looking at carbohydrates, according to females between the ages of 19 and 30, typically we should be consuming about 45 to 65% of our calories should come from carbohydrates. And again, we encourage to have whole grains. Now, looking at females 51 and plus, same thing, 45 to 65. So looking across the board, it's the same thing. So recommendations of carbohydrates are quite important to our overall diet. So now I'm going to go ahead and take a pause and get some questions, and we'll provide answers from our audience today.
Thank you, Dr. Amen. That was extremely informative. We have some questions coming in to you. And also, if you are watching us live, go ahead and type your questions for Dr. Amen. We can ask her here right on the spot. So the first one that has come through, Dr. Amen, was really talking about these low carb diets. And, you hear them a lot in the popular press, and you might even have some physicians suggesting a low carb diet as well. Are there specific maybe are there specific benefits of a low carb diet when it comes to long-term weight loss?
You asked the golden question, and we are actually going to be addressing this in the second half of this presentation. But just briefly, a lot of these low carb diets is what I like to call them. They're the short-term fixes. They can benefit, but it's just for the moment. And we'll see today from actual clinical trials. I don't want to give the answer too early, but we will see that that our plans, our diets should be of a complete plate, a complete and a balanced plate that includes variety of different types of resources that promote carbohydrate intake, but the healthy items. So to answer the question without deviating too much, it's almost like a short-term fix. So there are benefits, but they're quite short.
In talking about these low carbohydrate diets, we do have another question: that is there such a thing as getting too low carbohydrates or too little in your diet?
It's true that there are a lot of individuals who do not consume a balanced plate, can actually get very, very low carbohydrates. And because they are missing that component from their dietary plan, they can actually miss out on some of the vitamins and minerals that are unique to the carbohydrate world. Yes, the plate does have fruits, vegetables, grains, and protein, but each of those categories have their unique benefits. And when we eliminate one group, we are going to be eliminating anything that could potentially be found in that grain itself or in that particular category. So there is such a thing, yes. And that's why we always promote a balanced plate, more so of a healthy lifestyle pattern versus being on an extremely low carb plan.
That makes sense. So another question we have is, everyone seems to want lots of protein. Can I get my protein needs from carbohydrates? So I would assume they're talking about maybe plant sources.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of plant-based sources that are rich in protein, but are also an important component of carbohydrates. One of those perfect examples is legumes, or in other words, beans and lentils. All the beans, a lot of the beans, a lot of the lentils are contributing an important source of a protein, and they also have a source of a carbohydrate. Now, if someone is wanting to get most of their carbs from protein sources, they have to just increase their portion size depending if they're following a vegan lifestyle or vegetarian lifestyle. But that just going to be depending on what source they are getting their carbohydrates from. But absolutely, they could.
Okay. So one more question before we get to the second half, and this is starting to get into disease processes like diabetes. So this particular question said, is a keto diet beneficial to someone who has diabetes?
So to answer that question, it is, but again, it is a short term. Someone who wants to live a healthy lifestyle should always, again, follow a healthy, balanced plate. But yes, you can. It is good for diabetes, but again, you may be addressing additional health problems that may arise from following a particular diet for a longer period of time, such as the ketogenic diet. So I always advise a balanced plate is better, even for diabetes management. We'll see in just a minute. It's a lot better than just following just a plan like the ketogenic.
Okay, well, Dr. Amen, you kind of teased the second half. Why don't we get to it then?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and dive into it. So thank you very much for those questions. And I'm excited to dive into the second half of this. But first, the way I like to start here Now, the question that we may think about a lot of the times is, what impacts our body weight? Is it just the food? Is it exercise? Is it our genetics? What could be? Is it my metabolism? Or what could be those factors? So from what we can understand, that our body weight is impacted, yes, by a lot of the physiological factors and even metabolic factors. So for example, our bodies is affected by our gut microbiota, our nutrition, our exercise, our stress, if we have, whether we have health conditions or not, are we taking medications or not. But our body weight, we have to understand what is really affecting those factors, and altogether, again, across that board. So one way that we can address how our body responds to our body weight is by our nutrition. So normally, I just want to define two definitions here before we dive into the topic. So hunger is a physiological response versus an appetite where it's a physiological. So what happens when we get hungry and our stomachs are empty, our hormone, the ghrelin, actually levels tend to rise up, telling us, hey, it's time to eat. And so we'll go ahead and eat. And when now we have food in our stomach, so after eating, our ghrelin level goes down and our leptin level hormones go up. That tells us, or it sends a signal that telling us, hey, stop eating. And so there is really a connection between our mind and our gut connecting with one another. So the quality of nutrition can help balance this metabolism, and it can help balance the production of hormones and it can detect when we're truly hungry and when we are truly full. So this is very, very important. So our nutrition, whether it's quality and quantity, both of them combined together, matters in the sense of telling us when to eat and how much to eat. And it is our job to listen to what our body is connecting with us. So the concept of finishing our plate in just one sitting, or eating too little, being afraid that we're going to gain that weight just because our food has carbohydrates, is something that I want to dive into the research and show you what research has said. In a study that looked at the association between the changes in carbohydrate intake and long-term weight changes, we can see from the setting of a prospective cohort that combining the nurse health study and then the health professionals follow-up study between 1,363,000 men and women over between the ages of 65 and younger that did not have diabetes, that did not have cancer, and were free from cardiovascular disease and other conditions. And they measured their weight changes over a period of 4 years. So this was the question that was asked earlier. And we found that, or the study found, that a lot of individuals, by replacing the refined carbohydrates, the starchy vegetables, and the sugary sweet beverages with equal servings of whole grains, fruits, and non-starchy vegetables, actually experienced a weight reduction versus those individuals who continue to have these sources of sugars actually experienced more weight gain. So we can see that it's very important that over the period of 4 years. So it's very important that the quality of carbohydrate resources over a long-term period is a lot better than having a short period of a low-carb diet, particularly. In a meta-analysis of 25 different randomized clinical trials that looked at 1,233 cases to see whether low carbohydrates diet are associated with differences in weight loss and well-being in people with obesity, found that low carbohydrate diets, with significant reduction in the body, yes, for 3 to 4 and 6 to 8 months, but looking at it long term, over 10 to 14 and 18 to 30 months, they did not see that difference. And so this tells us that, yes, you could follow a low carb diet, but you just have to understand that this is a short-term reduction versus a long-term management. Now, taking this a little bit further here, and we looked at a systematic review of 110 randomized clinical trials. on looking at 4,135 individuals to see whether the effect of carbohydrate restrictions on body weight in obese and overweight individuals. And looking at the result, we can see that each 10% decrease in carbohydrate intake reduced body weight by 0.64 kilograms at 6 months of follow-up and 1.15 kilograms. But when looking at this 12 months and longer, actually that effect declined. There is no difference. There's no linear relationship between that. And in another study of a more randomized clinical trials, we could see the same exact thing, that yes, even with individuals who have diabetes, that type 2 diabetes, yes, you could see those benefits, but again, it is not a long-term benefit. So now addressing the myth, why are carbohydrates so misunderstood then? And how bad are they for weight management? So I hope by now we could see the trend and where this is going. Now, we usually, the myth is there because we usually don't take into account both quality and quantity. And we're often focused more on a single food, and we forget that carbohydrates is in everything that we eat. And not only that, but each food source that we consume that is rich in a carbohydrate source, one way or another, it is actually rich in these vitamins and minerals that enhances our metabolic function. Not only that, but they play a critical role in our gut bacteria. And alone, that also helps with weight management. So we tend to neglect carbohydrates altogether because we keep thinking that carbohydrates are the bad guys. But in reality, both are important, the quality and the quality. So the type of carbohydrates that you choose, it does actually matter. Now, although it is true that yes, carbohydrate diets do lead to a rapid weight loss, but you can't stay on this for too long. And we have to address also our dietary behaviors and dietary patterns and our personal choices. So really understanding how to select the correct amount of carbohydrates, not just which carbohydrates, the healthy carbohydrates, and the right type to learn what it works for you is very important to helping your bodies and assisting with long-term weight management or achieving healthy body weight. One way you could do this, this is just a quick tool that I want to provide to you. You could actually visit this website. The link is at the lower side of the slide. It's called a DRI calculator, Dietary Reference Intake Calculator. By simply entering basic information, you could get an estimate approximately of where you should be around. So I went ahead and I entered my information. So it's telling me this, although this may be just an estimate, it tells you where you should be at some point in time at that period, whether you're physically active or if you are sedentary, and where you are in your lifespan. That also is important. Now, some other tools that could be helpful in tracking down what you normally eat to understand your eating patterns a lot better, you could visit the myplate.gov. It's a free website that has a lot of useful information. And also, if you do a personalized food diary or keep track of what you're eating, that can also enhance your perception about how is your quality of choices. What do you have in front of you? Now, one of the best tools that we're actually, I would recommend is using the MyFitnessPal. It's a free website that you enter what you eat every single day, and it tells you if you're meeting your dietary goal of carbohydrates, fat, proteins, and it even has the capability of tracking how much fiber are you actually getting from your eating pattern, from your day. And another app is called Lose It. It's another way to track it. Now, I went ahead and I just searched about the common response of, hey, how do I manage my carbohydrates, or what are my sources? And honestly, there was tons of apps that were available. Now, be mindful that some of them you have to pay for a subscription, but others are actually free. But to show you how we constantly have this misunderstanding of carbohydrates with being a bad guy, that there is an actual app called Carb Manager that specifically was created to tell you, are you really eating carbohydrates? Is it low enough? Are you tracking what you're eating? So again, it's the quality and the quantity of the carbohydrates that matter. So you may utilize all of those apps, but be mindful and keep it in mind that carbohydrate quality matter. And I just wanted to take this minute here to address how you can address how you eat or what your plate looks like by eating healthy carbohydrates when you are eating out and when you're on campus, whether you're a student or an employee, or if you're traveling. Can you still maintain eating a healthy carbohydrates? And the answer is yes. So now let's look at. So looking at total calories, because carbohydrates contribute to calories altogether. So looking at this burrito bowl, it looks like it has rice, white rice, it has black beans, it has chicken with cooked sauce, guacamole, salsas, cheese jalapenos, and this person took with them iced tea with sugar. But this contributed about 1,120 total calories. So these are just from choosing different carbohydrate sources, which is what we normally do if we were to choose a food option. But if you're intentional about choosing healthy carbohydrates, this individual chose to have brown rice, 1 cup, romaine lettuce, black beans, grilled chicken, added vegetables. In the other plate, this person did not add vegetables. Added in this bowl right here, they added sliced avocados with salsa. They added still iced tea, but they did not get sugar with it. Now, look at the difference. This plate looks a lot fuller than this plate. And not only that, but look at the total amount of calories. So I hope this shows you that the quality of this food is highly nutritionally dense. Yes, it does have carbohydrates, but these carbohydrates impact our calories a lot different. And our body can metabolize it as well differently versus a refined carbohydrate where there's little nutritional benefits to it. And so, yes, you could have it anywhere you go. Not only that, but you can have healthy carbohydrates and still practice your culture. It's great with any culture. Yes, you can have potatoes. Yes, you can have veggies. Yes, you can have beans. Yes, you can have a lot of different food options that are custom to your culture. But the quality of the foods that we choose has a big difference, and they play a big role into our weight management and overall health. So I always recommend this. Plan when possible. If you're going out for a birthday or a gathering, look at the menu ahead of time. If you're planning a potluck, great. Think of some options that a lot of people have. Healthy food can be tasty. Look for a colorful plate. Looking up some recipes. Going onto our website, our Living Whole website, they have a lot of recipes that are amazing, that are healthy and great, and does have a balance of nutrients. Now, you may ask me at the very end, well, since I talked a lot about carbohydrates, what are some options that I could choose from? Yes, fruits and vegetables and some plant-based proteins, but the actual carbs, the grains that we think of, like the rice, the pasta. So I took some minute to give you some options to choose from that are quite healthy. So for breads, there's a bread called double fiber bread by the brand Oral Wheat, and we're not advertising brands, but this particular brand I actually use at home myself, and another brand called Ezekiel bread. I've taken a look at the nutritional benefits, and to me, those are the best. Oats, Fiber One cereal, shredded wheat cereal, quinoa, barley, couscous, farro. Those are the ancient grains that we tend to see and may not recognize on the shelf. They're actually very, very beneficial. Brown rice and whole grain pasta. So rice and pasta are not the bad guy. We just have to choose the right quality of foods. Rye bread, rye flour, those are also exceptional options. So again, the repeated question is, can I eat carbohydrates to manage my weight? Yes, but always read the nutrition label and assess the facts. What is inside of your food, and can you eat it at home? Can you have it? Now, to end this here, I want to end with a slide called Avoid Diet Confusion and Actually Weigh the Evidence. When you are following any program, when you're looking to see whether this particular plan is going to be helpful, like the low carb diet, are they eliminating one group, or are they recommending to take a supplement that can enhance burning of our fat so we could lose weight that way? Again, remember, when you are eliminating a food source, you are eliminating the major nutrients that this food is rich in. Like we've seen in carbohydrates, they're amazing in fiber and they're amazing in some B vitamins. When you take that away, you are taking these important resources out. Look to see if this weight loss program has a rigid menu. What else does it provide? Do they promise an extensive weight loss over a short period of time or within a period of time? As you've seen from the research, that it's more of a lifestyle approach that we need to take this, and not so much by having a severe low calorie, low carb plans that are going to be a lifelong program that we will do. So please assess the quality. Implement whole grains into your dietary pattern. Choose variety of fruits and vegetables, and avoid processed refined carbohydrates that are chemically rich rather than nutrient rich. Avoid sugar-containing beverages. Read the label whenever you can and whenever there's a label present. Practice portion control. As we've seen, both quality and quantity matter. It's never too late if you want to take actions today, but go ahead and take it. Practice now. Watch your plate and promote color onto your plate. And with that being said, I am ready for more questions, and I am very, very much thankful for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amen. That was extremely, again, second half informative as well. Want to ask you a couple of questions. We're running out of time here, but a couple of questions that came up is what role do carbohydrates then play in energy levels during weight loss or exercise? That we need them even though we're trying to cut them out.
Yes, so we've seen that carbohydrates are actually an important fuel source, and they do promote or enhance metabolic function. So when your body can absorb this blood glucose, it actually in your gut fiber, it absorbs all the excess nutrients that are unwanted, anything that your body can eliminate out through healthy bowel movements, and distributing the nutrients all across your organ system, promoting a healthier weight loss and speeding your metabolism to actually digest the food. So your body takes time when you are trying to break down each food component, but your gut is where carbohydrates play a big role in speeding up that metabolism to digest that food.
Another question we've had, and this is another myth that would love you to bust wide open, is that, we hear that carbohydrates are bad for you, but then we also hear carbohydrates late at night are terrible for you. Is there a time of day we should be eating carbohydrates?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So that dives into a big component of being consistent, and the timing is very important, and also being consistent with your time. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner is a healthy plan that someone should follow. So a healthy breakfast, then you space. So about 4 hours later, then you would have a lunch, and then 4 hours later you would have a dinner. And in between the breakfast and the lunch, 2 hours later, have a small snack, and then after lunch, 2 hours later, have a small snack if with the dietary plan. And so then the rest of the time, allow your body to digest and break down that food. So yes, late at night is bad for weight gain, and yes, I wouldn't advise with having carbohydrates later in the evening. That can eventually have your body store the carbohydrates as a fat instead, because then you will be sleeping, and that's when your body's trying to go to work, in other words. Okay. So the timing of the day matters.
Thank you, Dr. Amen. It sounds like, the take-home messages here is we don't have to cut carbohydrates, but a balanced diet is really the thing that we should be striving for, and quality versus quantity, or quality and quantity matters.
Well, exactly. Quality and quantity do matter. Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure to have you today with Wellness Live. And thank you to our audience for joining us. I want to invite you to our next Wellness Live, which will be on February 27. We are going to have a very special guest, Dr. Elizabeth Johnston Taylor, who is out of our School of Nursing. And she's going to talk to us about a really important topic. How can I pray when I do not feel good? You won't want to miss it. Well, again, I want to say thank you so much from our entire Wellness Live team for joining us today. My name is Dr. Olivia Moses, and we'll see you next time.